Because Adam's already bought 3.
Maybe.
Listen up, Umi. This is a podcast with the most ducker. This is Forge the Narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul, your host of the Lost Souls podcast. I'm joined by Tanya Gates.
Hey everybody.
Adam Camilleri and Red Powell.
Draw.
Yeah, good awkward silence, Adam. I
Yeah.
guess I'll just wait forever for you to say something.
You know how it is. Well, I'm waiting for you. I'm being polite.
No, he said
What
your
you-
name first.
what
I
you-
have to go.
what you-
I have to wait to go second.
No, I'm being polite. What are you being?
Did you eat at Waffle House yet?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Nice.
All right. Continue. Let's go.
It was as good as I thought it was going to be.
Good. Then welcome back to America.
I'm glad that we're in the right frame of mind to discuss Strike Force Agastus.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Could not be more correct. Minded.
So we're going to talk about the Desolation Marine. We absolutely are.
Oh, there's a bit. Yeah.
It's a spicy meatball.
Well, it's
It's
been
definitely a model that you can purchase.
I do want to say that with a lot of these models too, sometimes they look better when you have them in your hands, and also when you've put your color scheme on them. I think there's with Ultramarines, come on, they could be Blood Angels, but
Yep. Bingo card. Got it. All right,
that aside, we'll talk about them in a second. We'll also talk about what comes in the kit. You actually get some heavy intercessors, which are very neat. I think they're kind of underutilized. Heavy intercessors.
Yeah, I generally agree. I mean, it's been a long time in the game since we've looked at a Space Marine troop and been excited. But we could at least look at them and see durability, which is also a thing.
I guess a lot of this is also chapter dependent. Of what you're going to be using.
I just assume that you have a big notepad with a tick box system on like a clipboard, and it just has can be played as Blood Angels, tick or cross, and you look down and you tick and go, well, I guess I'm buying the model.
That's pretty much how my thought process works. Yes,
it's pretty good.
But in like the heavy intercessors, I think they work really well. I do think they work pretty well for Ultramarines, and then other shooting type based chapters. There's also a Primaris Lieutenant in this box.
No,
Cool.
really?
It wouldn't be a box set without a Primaris Lieutenant, right?
It wouldn't be near as good, but it's got all the options.
It's the multi-part one, right? He could be a whatever Primaris Lieutenant you want him to be.
Wait a minute. You're telling me after 29 Primaris Lieutenants, they were like, let's start making multi-part now.
And this one has a cool bionic arm that you can use.
Why?
With a pistol.
Why now? What changed? Have they given up? Have they finally thrown in the towel? They're just like, we can't make the magic. They got like 51 up on the whiteboard, and they're like, we can't do it, guys. Multi-part. Let's go.
I love it for all the bits, though. It's one of those things to where, when you are looking, like maybe you don't use the parts. Like, let's say you get the box set, you don't necessarily use the parts to make a primary lieutenant. You start making out, cooler sergeants for your intercessors, and that kind of stuff.
Well, that's exactly right. Remember the Space Marine Captain box, which was like revolutionary? You could make every kind of Space Marine Captain. But what people ended up doing was just using that one box to make an entire command squad, retinue, entire, Vanguard veteran squads customized and all this stuff. Really, really cool.
Voice, man. Come on.
Am I speaking to that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
About how we were all making our command
Secrets.
squads. Quit telling them.
Secrets.
We're gonna quit making multi-part models again.
Well, they're only just started.
Yeah, with Primaris. Don't ruin
It's true.
it.
It's
Go
true.
right back to it.
The Dreadnought, though, has me excited. Like, really excited. Not only because it is big and huge and stompy. I have not incorporated a lot of Redemptors into my forces because it like doesn't typically like lend itself for the play style that I like doing with Marines most of the time. But
What kind of playstyle is that?
Getting up a little up close and personal, maybe trying to roll a bunch of attacks, maybe trying to do some damage with those attacks. Although the Redemptor is pretty good, nowhere near as good as the Brutalis. And these things, if you've never built a Redemptor Dreadnought before, this goes together in a very similar way. It's almost like an action figure. Like it's all
Go
very
on.
posable after you build it.
Oh, really? It's not like a set pose
No,
like all of the Chaos Space Marines?
the joints,
Oh,
the
sorry.
joints are they rotate. You can the elbows manipulatable, the shoulders are manipulatable, the legs to some degree are manipulatable. Like and even heck, you could probably make the torso spin if you wanted to. That is outside of what the kit does by itself, but it'd be pretty easy to do it. The weapons, the waist weapons move up and down. The gun on its back, or the head gun, swivels.
There's just so many weapons on it.
Fundamentally, the Primaris kits have made me feel like an orc designed them from the beginning. And this box this box, ladies and gentlemen, is no exception.
If your theories, you got your whiteboard out with all the yarn to all the I knew it, Madnak, Grotnik.
It all comes back to more Dagger.
No, but I think for this strike force though, it's pretty interesting. The Phobos strike force, the Vanguard, right? Like they all had the stealth thing going on, but then you've got a balance of the Desolation Marines, and then you've got the this close combat Redemptor, almost like it was balancing. Like this strike force is meant to be balanced in certain degrees, right?
Do you mean balanced against the other strike forces as a purpose of?
I was going to say more just in that it has a close combat unit, and then it has these ranged units, so it's got a more combined arms approach to it.
Yeah, there's kind of been are you alluding to that previously? There's been kind of a theme to the the Primaris releases. Like we had the Indominus, which was kind of the lad on crusade kind of aesthetic, and then previously we had the Phobos, which of course the insurgency. And then we had then there was the first wave. So yeah, you're right. This one is kind of it feels more DACA than not. But still has melee units, so it kills kind of rounded. Also, I will note that Paul's secretly excited about the Brutalis because there's only a matter of time before it's a Death Company model.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, I was thinking. Don't get me wrong. A Black Templar version, right, is mean enough in its own right with the Invuln and then the Benediction for Feel No Pain and everything. That'll definitely put it on the map. But then to make it Death Company is going to be something else. I really look forward to seeing.
I was also chatting with some mates on the way up about it being it was alluded to that it's a bit quicker, a bit quicker of feet,
movement
faster.
10.
Yes.
That is fast.
White advancing and charging with that move 10, possibly going 16 plus 2d6, 28-inch threat range seems pretty spice.
13 wounds, strength 7, toughness 7, 5 attacks base, of course hitting on 3s for weapon skill and ballistic skill, 3+ armor save. It does have the Duty Eternal, which is subtract 1 damage from any attack that comes at it, and it can explode. You knew that because it's a vehicle. The weapons on it, the weapons are pretty good. It's got a multi-melta, or you can have heavy bolters. What I built this, I opted for the multi-meltas. Twin bolt rifle comes with the fist. If you take the Brutalis fist, then it comes with the twin bolt rifles. I went with the Brutalis Talons, which give you ×2 strength, sort of the fist too, neg 4 AP with the Talons, and D3 plus 3 damage. Each time this attack is made with this weapon, you can re-roll the wound roll, or you can do sweep attacks, which each time an attack is made with this weapon profile, make 2 hit rolls instead of 1. It is strength of the user, though, which is 7, neg 3 AP, 1 damage. The fist are ×2, neg 3, D3 plus 3, but they come with the bolt rifles. I think you need to go with the Talons on this one.
Yeah, I've long believed that every Dreadnought model should have a sweep attack built in. So when I have the option to take one, I'm probably going to take one.
I can definitely see some value, and especially if you're playing something that can benefit from the bolter rule, like the bolt rifles being rapid fire too. Maybe there's some play there, but right now, I mean, it was Talons all the way for me.
Well, I think there's a lot of interesting duality to put there. If you put the multi-meltas in the chest, you don't need the big punches from the fist as much, so the sweep makes a lot more sense. Or vice versa, if you go heavy bolters in the chest, maybe you need the more punchiness and higher damage, so maybe you go that route. But I think there's as long as the points are reasonable, I don't think there's a wrong way to build it.
It also comes with the Twin Icarus Iron Hail Heavy Stubber, which is 36-inch range, heavy 8, strength 4, neg 1 AP, damage 1. but you add 1 to that attacks roll if you're firing against an aircraft.
So, a question, Paul. Like many new kids from GW, and thank you very much, GW, for listening. Does this thing make magnets like a champ?
You could, but I'll tell you that the when you're building the assembly for the fist, the arms, is that the whole like bracer, the part right behind the hand, is different if you're taking the claws or the fist.
Well, let's say I just wanted to pop the arms off and put on, say, arms with guns on them.
Oh, like a Redemptor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Because they're in the swivel mounts. They basically kind of slide in, turn, and then you could probably turn and take them off again.
How about that?
Same chassis as far as that goes.
Nice.
The multi-meltas and the bolters and the heavy bolters would be, I think, well, I don't want to say difficult, but challenging for some to swap out consistently.
Sure.
So short answer is, where there's a will, there's a way.
That's right.
but not quite as modular, like I say, as like the Dorn.
Sure.
This thing, as you mentioned, very fast, 13 wounds, decent toughness, decent armor save, -1 to damage. Let's talk about the points here for a minute. The Brutalis Dreadnought is 170 points, and the Meltas are 15 points on there.
That seems fair, right?
That seems pretty good.
Desolation Squad, unit size 5 to 10, 35 points apiece. And if you want to upgrade the Sergeant to have the Vingor launcher, it's plus 10 points. Now,
And the Vingor launcher is which one?
That is a 48-inch heavy D6 strength 6 neg 1 AP 2 damage blast weapon that can fire at indirectly targets that can't be seen. Shooting this against like lightly armored or low toughness units, it tears them up pretty good.
This is a very interesting unit. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. I feel like I'm going to have to sit in front of this data sheet for quite a few minutes, if not hours, trying to figure out where the line is and what they're built to do, because they sound like a unit of Devastators plus, or they're a unit of Eradicators light, or Hellblasters. So they're sitting in a really weird thing. I like to say the words "fit for purpose" a lot. It's kind of like becoming one of my catchphrase. I'm not sure what their shtick is. What they're going to exist in my army to do. But I'm intrigued, with the exception of the elephant in the room. But we'll get there.
Let me address that for a second. The memes have been golden.
Oh, fantastic! The Fifth Element ones are my favorites.
The short circuit ones also,
Yes.
and the different configurations of the eyebrows.
Yes,
I've loved them.
Yeah. So like this, every kid growing up saw one of these guns during the ads of their cartoons on Saturday mornings, and usually they were Super Soakers. They were water pistols because they had all the tanks on the side and the things and the flames and the levers and the.
But there's a lot going on with these Marines, absolutely. But before we get, let's talk about that. Yeah, there is something, when you get them and build them, and it's a little bit different when they're in your hand than when you're seeing it on the internet.
What are you saying?
When you start to put your own personality and personal spin and the color scheme and that kind of stuff, it all kind of comes together in a way that is, with chapter markings and stuff, you start to kind of feel it bulk out in your own way. And I think there's a design philosophy here that I want to theorize on, is that the Marines themselves are kind of getting more like 40,000 years in the future from like today's stuff, where the firstborn Marines were 40,000 years from 30 years ago's weapons and stuff. And
what do you think about that, Tanya?
I'm gonna disagree. I have been kind of reading up, not so much about like military history. Well, I guess a little bit about military history and whatnot. And I really don't see like anything in the Space Marines, in the Primaris Space Marines, that like screams to me like it's, it doesn't scream to me that it's like improvements upon what we have now. So my theory about it is that like the whole idea of Warhammer 40k has been like, just take everything and make it more ridiculous, like just make it more. It's like, Kylo Ren, right? Just more, just yeah. So if you started out and everything is ridiculously big and ridiculously strong and ridiculously tough, and you have like, what is it, 40 years? Is it 40 years this year?
Yeah.
Of Warhammer?
Oh, I thought you have Star Wars. I'm sorry, I was
No. 35 years of Warhammer? Something like
Yes,
that.
that's
So if you just do more every year, it just gets ridiculous. And I think that's where Primaris is at right now. Like the guns are ridiculous, the armor is ridiculous. I mean, in the most delightful way. I love it, but yeah, I don't think that there was anything sort of put into the thought process besides just more.
I think weaponry in general is getting less. Maybe this is the end that goes into my shoulder, and this is the end that gets pointed towards the enemy, and that may be what they're trying to capture with this particular design.
What do you think, Adam?
Primaris wise, this is the first true swing and a miss in my books.
Dang.
Prior to this, I wasn't in love with Gravis armor or the booster boots on things like suppressors and inceptors, but I could see where it was going. I knew what the idea was, what the design philosophy is. I have no idea what they were going for with these guys. I have a zero concept of what the whole Gravis armor, blast shield, stocky armor encased with protective stuff to protect the armor. Cool, whatever. This doesn't look good.
See, and I love like the over the topness of everything.
Yes.
So, like, I thought that the booster boots were really cool.
And exactly, and I up until this point, I would have respected your opinion and been like, yeah, cool, it's just not for me. I haven't heard of anybody who likes the aesthetic of these dudes. I have yet to see some person be like, by golly, that's for me. Everyone I've seen has been like, wow. It's yeah. I'm sorry. This is like I said, first swing and a miss for me in quite some time. From GW in general, actually. Like this is the first time I think they've brought out since the Dari terrain kit, where I've been like, wow, that was a bad call. So we'll see, and there's certainly, hopefully there's some people out here who enjoy this, who are really looking forward to these kits, because I definitely haven't canvassed a multitude of individuals.
I mean, definitely leave comments everywhere for Adam and tell him like what you love about this kit.
Yeah, someone mark this timestamp down because we got to come back to this in about 4 months when Adam's painting them all dark green and running them with his dark lenses.
Well, I've seen some people who have put forward ideas of using the kit, altering it, kit bashing it, and like molding it to something that suits them. And if I purchase them, that's what I plan to do. Same with like Lord Solar. Awesome kit, awesome model. Not for me, doesn't fit my aesthetic or what I like. I'll be working with that kit to turn it into something I do. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's bad, don't buy it. If you like it, go for it. And if you want it or you like the rules, buy it and make it into something that works for you. Red, you have been conspicuous in this. Give us your take.
Dang, man. I was just trying to promote everyone else's opportunity to talk about it.
Nah.
Dodging.
So, Paul, I appreciate the perspective in regards to it, like as kind of an appeal to the future. There's this whole thing of a revolution of military affairs, right? An RMA, and there's this whole aspect to that where that's a military term in regards of military theory and how things advance. And unfortunately, I feel like the Space Marine in and of itself, and some might be able to argue to a certain degree that Primaris is a revolution of military affairs in regards of 40k, right? We went from 1 wound Space Marines, they technically became 2, and then we moved up into the Primaris thing, and it was a whole other thing. And then we look at these guns. Is the shift of the guns enough to justify an RMA or a revolution in regards of it? And while aesthetically it does go in a different direction, where Adam, if anybody wants to point this out again, Adam says it looks bad. I just wanted to underline that. That's what Adam said. Right?
You didn't disagree. I'll underline that too, people.
I'm just pointing out what you said, Adam. That's all. But I will say, Paul, I don't think this moves it doesn't move far enough to escape the fact that it's still just like a handgun kind of deal, right? Like it's a rifle kind of setup. I think if they were shoulder mounted, or there's some other kind of apparatus, even then, like the fact that it's cool that they did. I will argue mechanically it went into this whole indirect aspect of it, which I think is pretty cool. In fact, I think I've mentioned before, right? The Abrams, the main battle tank of the United States Army, has configuration and capability to shoot indirect. We don't really do that anymore, but it can, or it could at one point. And so it's kind of funny that we see this going almost backwards in certain regards. They're like, well, hey, what if we just arc the round, or we have the technology with smart rounds or what have you? Because you have to assume in the year 40,000, there's this whole other aspect to it. In the pre-show, we were talking about Space Marines being sneaky, and everybody's like, well, that's kind of silly. I mean, they're like 8 feet tall, massive armor. Some of them
Bright
wear
yellow.
like vibrant yellow. It's just
Yeah.
a horrible idea, right? Like they can't be sneaky looking like that. But then you're like, oh, well, technology. I mean, they've got something that bends light. They've got something that dampens sound. They've got something that so on and so forth. So sure, they've got smart rounds. They've got whatever. And it's kind of cool. My next part, though, is that I guess I was kind of surprised. And this, Adam, I think really underscores your opinion, is that I was surprised for new models and everything that were coming out. And again, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I've missed something from what I saw in the Warcom articles or what have you, or what you were detailing, Paul. But these don't seem that effective. They don't even seem like, there's certain things that I've seen people run because it was effective, not because it looked good. And I don't necessarily agree with that to certain aspects, but people still do it because it's effective enough that it gets the point across. But now you've got this model that some people don't like. I think some people can appreciate. It's cool. Primaris Marines with big guns, bigger guns, and they're indirect. But then you go
Lots
back
of
to
guns too. Like every Marine is armed with 2 guns. At
2
minimum.
guns, and the one gun, the big gun they're holding, looks like it's got 3 guns like stapled onto it, right? And so it's got this aspect to it. It's this arsenal kind of deal. And I kind of, if you look at like some Gundam models, I'm a huge fan of like Heavy Arms, which is the one from one of the renditions of Gundam that just has like guns everywhere, missile launchers on everything. And the crisis suits from Tau kind of embody that in certain regards. But this thing here, I'll tell you what, I was surprised. I won't say disappointed, because these aren't necessarily my models, right? If I'm going to play, I'm looking for bolters in a lot of cases because I just like the volume that comes from it. But when it comes to these, I admit I'm very surprised that these are not heavy intercessors, right? They're a artillery type. I could buy off on there being an artillery type of Primaris, but you're going to do all that, and you're going to have heavy intercessors that we've introduced and we played through.
They're T5.
And then so are these?
No. Heavy intercessors are T5.
Yeah,
I'm
heavy
saying what a
intercessors,
comparison between the two might be.
Yep, with Gravis armor, right? They're still Gravis armor doesn't necessarily mean T5, right?
It does.
It does now.
It does.
Everything that's Gravis is T5.
Cool, and 3 wounds, right?
Yes.
Why would these not be the artillery type with Gravis armor? Why? Someone tell me a good reason why these don't have Gravis armor.
I cannot answer that question.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. And that's the thing, is that like I'm buying off on bigger guns. I'm buying off on ridiculous guns. I'll buy into all that. We just want to keep adding these things like to a point. Like, why not? Like, look at the AdMech. Look at Call. He's just slapping stuff together. He's like, this is cool. This is awesome. But then we're not going to put him
in the candy store.
Yeah, but we're not going to put him in Gravis armor after that. Like, that's where you lost me. And I'm sorry. Like, I buy off on the artillery aspect. It's effective. It's got its means. We also might want to, and don't get me wrong, not saying like it isn't on the horizon and I'm just wish listing, but maybe reconsider the whole indirect, if you can't see them, it's whatever, +1 to their armor save and all that kind of stuff, because this now seems even less effective, but it doesn't even mechanically go that well. And then they don't have Gravis armor. So those are my 2 key points, I guess.
I do think it's interesting that this unit has evoked such discussion.
It really has gotten a near visceral reaction from the community, which we haven't seen in quite a while. And I'm here for it. I think it's cool. I think the memery and the fun we can have with this is just fine and in some ways healthy. And of course, look, nobody is going to say, oh, Games Workshop can't make miniatures like they used to when they make one that isn't for you out of the 100 they are going to releasing every year. So no baby with the bathwater stuff. And this doesn't mean like the Primaris range is defunct or anything. It's just this one's
No.
kind of silly looking.
Well, let's now talk about the rules just a little bit, if we can, to segue us into that, because you mentioned, like what they can do, and then of course that's going to influence if it's right for people to take in their particular chapter or whatever.
Sure.
For sure.
So every model is equipped with a bolt pistol, Castellan launcher. Castellan launcher is the 36-inch range heavy D3, strength 4, neg 1 AP, damage 1 blast weapon that can fire indirect, and a super frag rocket launcher. Super frag rocket launcher is heavy D3 plus 3, strength 4, neg 1 damage blast. Or you can replace that with the super crack launcher, which is heavy 1, strength 8, neg 3, D3 plus 3 damage.
So I gotta stop in first addressing the bolt pistol. I love these models that have massive rifles, and then they're like, there's the pose where it's like, I got this thing, but I'm definitely gonna pop you with this bolt pistol.
Yeah.
Now, continuing off of that,
I could de-atomize you from from a couple of miles away, but I got
You're
this
not
little
worth
pistol.
it.
I got this pea shooter right here.
We've all seen the movie where there's that dramatic pistol draw and the hero, pops off one round that saves the day.
I mean, several first-person shooters, right? I mean, it's faster to just change over to your pistol sometimes than it is to reload. Okay, I get it. Sure. Well, let's continue. But then we get to this. You're going to tell me that every firstborn Space Marine with a rocket launcher can just put a different warhead in his missile launcher. But these dudes, the technologically, remember your words, Paul, technologically advanced. You said it. They got to switch guns.
Look, you got to be prepared you got to be prepared for any situation. You know that.
I feel like we're still not moving forward here, but okay.
I when it says super in front of everything, I keep hearing super salad, super crack, super salad, super frag.
See, when I heard super frag, I immediately was like, she's a super frag, super fraggy. Yeah.
I thought you were going to go a different direction with that, but all right.
I think we're in the right direction.
That with all the indirect and the basically volume of fire, you can make a case for them. I think if you're trying to just make some devastators, that you want las cannons, take las cannons.
Okay, hear me out. What about for boarding actions where you're very restricted in what you can take? These give you a number of different profiles that kind of make you a little bit more flexible going into boarding actions.
But isn't there limitations to indirect?
But you don't have to shoot it indirect. You could still shoot it if you can see it.
It's going to be situational. I mean, the way the Marine Codex works anyways, every single unit in there is situational and going to be subbed in and out depending on what chapter you play, what rules you can layer on it.
Yeah, you want to be super fragilistic, extrialidocious? I get it. I got it.
So
see, y'all weren't there yet.
So fundamentally, the reason these guys bug me out, and the reason I think these are invoking so many reactions, is this is kind of a step off the path for the rest of the Primaris range. The Primaris range has been a kind of renaissance of the Legion Codex Legion Tactica that was initially launched with the Great Crusade, as in you have each unit that is specialized working as part of a whole massed force. Like you had your blocks of tactical marines, a la intercessors. You had your support squads, a la eradicators, hellblasters, etc. You had your specialists, recon marines, assault marines, etc. These guys are a bit of a toolbox, which is the first kind which is kind of what we got with when we got to the Codex Astartes, which is you have devastators that can have one of each gun if you want to. You can have stern guard with a bunch of different combis, etc. These guys represent more of the new Codex Astartes rather than the old Legion tactic stuff. So I think that's been bugging me out about these guys too. In addition, because they're like a dev squad, but they've got every gun at the same time, which is kind of weird.
I think you pay for it in the points a little bit, but yeah, I mean, look, remains to be seen.
I mean, I mean, if they've got amazing profiles and you pay the points for them, that's totally justified.
Box said, with the heavy intercessors, with the Brutalis Dreadnought, first chance to get them, the Primaris Lieutenant with the extra bits options that will, work their way into other squads, I have no doubt. One of the coolest things about that. Let's take a break.
Awesome.
We'll reflect on these Marines and maybe bring up some memes. We'll see you all in a second.
FTN is brought to you by Discount Games Inc. Please visit them at www.discountgamesinc.com. And don't forget to ask Jay about ways to save even more on your hobby projects.
Hey everybody, we are back. Ball Souls Podcast.
What up?
Rock and rolling.
Hey,
Maybe
we
a
gotta
little-
throw in there.
Maybe a little less salty now.
No. Again, we gotta come back. Like for all that, I'm talking about Gravis armor and everything. Like honestly, think about it. These things, it's strength 4, AP -1. It's gonna make guard, and it's reaching across the table. Like talking about a lot of the underslung artillery, it's gonna reach out and touch guard in places that they really don't want to deal with that. And then some of those, the missile launchers and everything, it's going to be able to deal with guard armor pretty effectively. And so I think that's something worth keeping in mind, that as guard, right, because as we're about to talk about an upcoming event, a very, very upcoming imminent event, I think guard is going to have a pretty good showing in this next weekend.
Totally agree. I would like to say, to echo what I said previously, like if there is a kit that comes out and you want to make a mockery of it, cool, have your fun, meme around, but do not feel guilty if you end up buying it at some point, or don't use that as a reason to not purchase it if you want it.
Because Adam's already bought 3.
Maybe. What I'm saying is, like I said before, like make the kit work for you. One of the best things G-Dub does, and a lot of other miniatures makers, is that they give you the concept of the unit, and then and the model and the sprue and all those things, and then what you do with it after you purchase it is your freaking business. And from a competitive or a tournament point of view, as long as it's got a similar silhouette, all the bits are there. I couldn't care what configuration they are. Put all the guns on their shoulders. Let them just be walking around with 2 bolt pistols. I don't mind.
Oh man, that sounds so cool.
Yeah, like literally go for it. Like as long as all the bits are there, I couldn't really care. Make it work for you. And if you want a model to look different to what it is, kit bash it. Like there's a lot of really cool options out there, especially seeing as Primaris Marines essentially all kind of fit together. It's all the same torso.
I know it may got maybe a little bit lost in the last segment, but I'm serious. Once you start putting your chapter specific upgrades on there, and you start to kind of breathe life into these things, it really does take on a whole different aspect.
And another thing too is, like, if you don't like the kit, either rules or the look of it or whatever, I think it's really important to like when you encounter that kit in the wild when somebody else is playing it, I think it's like a good rule to just like not mention it if you have feelings about it, right? Like don't yuck their young, just let them play with the toys that they want to play with, and like keep those negative feelings to yourself.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Sometimes I think we forget that, these are toys that other people are having fun with.
Yeah. Like you cannot make this a Death Company Dreadnought, but we'll definitely. I think that was a great idea to paint it as a Death Company Dreadnought.
Totally agree.
Definitely looking forward to getting across in that. So yeah, let's talk about the Cherokee Open coming up. FLG event, a little bit north of where I'm at right now. Wasn't able to attend. I've got some stuff happening, but Adam, you were there.
I'm sitting in the hotel room of that said event right now, and it's pretty nice. The resort hotel's pretty classy. I'll be checking out the event space tomorrow. Be able to report back a little bit more then. But really keen for this one. It's kind of the first big singles event of Arcs of Omen. I suppose Uprising in Australia was kind of the first one, but post LVO into the new season, I guess this is kind of the first like 250 plus player. 8 rounds.
Super major, as it were.
Yeah, 8 rounds if you go all the distance, go all the way if you make the top 8 cut. But really, it's a 9 round. One of my competitors just said 9 rounds. Holy,
nice.
Holy crap.
Strap in.
But yeah, it's a really interesting meta as well. There's a lot of spice. There's a lot of DACA to be had. Guard out in force, Votan out in force, Tau, Iron Hands, Dark Angels out in force. Very much looks like a shooting centric game at the moment.
What did you bring? Because you're playing in this event.
I am playing in this event. I brought Grey Knights, mate.
You said it was a shooting centric event.
And I brought Grey Knights, yes.
You took the targets, the shiniest targets.
Well, that's true, but also surprisingly, Grey Knights aren't horrible into shooting matchups because they have that good old fallback of just slapping down the Tide of Shadows and being just a little bit harder to handle
Okay.
whenever they really want to. Because, of course, it means you have cover in the open, and if you're in cover, you're -1 to hit. And the event we're playing at has player place terrain, so I have quite a bit of agency on where I can be -1 to hit. Of course, that could be on pivotal objectives if I place my terrain appropriately.
Seems savvy.
So that kind of stuff, yeah, that kind of gives me some agency. In addition, with things like Gate of Infinity, teleport, shunt, beep striking, anything, I can really just decide to not get annihilated turn 1, which is a lot of it feels good.
What type of configuration did you take? I mean, there's multiple different ways you can approach Grey Knights. I know they've only got
Absolutely,
4 kits or whatever for the most part, but
yeah,
lots of flexibility in between those kits.
So a lot of people are taking are pretty much just slapping down there 4 Dread Knights, of course 3 regulars, 1 being a Grandmaster, and then taking 30 Interceptors, because those are the 2 sliding scale best units in the book. I am doing a couple of things differently. I've got a 1 unit of 10 Strike Marines, and I've got 2 units of Purgation Squads with Psy Cannons, and then I've also got
and they can shoot at things they can't see. Is that am I remember right?
No, not anymore. Yeah, Astral Aim got changed to just be like ignores cover, which is still quite good. But yeah, but where the power is that Grey Knights have a phenomenally good secondary game. It's actually I think it's too good. So they have one secondary which people may be catching on to. It's called Teleport Assault. If I if I have Deep Strike, Gate of Infinity, or Teleport shunted, and a unit was killed by that unit, I get 5 points. I'll say that again, 5 points. So I need to do this 3 times in a game, and there's so many armies that take 4 Kroot Hounds as a screen, or a couple of scouts to go get them behind enemy lines, and then I kill them 5 points. It feels really, really powerful. There's a couple of little nuanced pieces to that makes it a really good secondary, in addition to just being kind of stupidly easy to get versus some armies.
Easy to get 5 points. Sounds good. But that's only 5 points. People can score a lot of points in a game.
That's true. Necrons exist. So their former best secondary, I argue Teleport Assault was already the best secondary, but a lot of people didn't think so. They thought Purifying Ritual was. And Purifying Ritual is you do a psychic action on an objective, get points associated with how many times you do it. Essentially, if you do it 3 times, you get 4 points. That's very powerful. But in Arcs of Omen, they upped Warp Charge requirement. So it's now Warp Charge 6 instead of Warp Charge 5. I've taken a brother captain who has a 2 CP strat to give out an aura of +1 to cast, in order to try and make that secondary more better again.
Okay.
Make it back to where it was. And so it's a lot of little. I'm jumping through hoops to try and make that back to being the near auto 15 it used to be. It was actually a bit of a fundamental percentage change going from a 5 to cast to 6 to cast. But anyway, now I can put it back to a 5 and then try and get it off a bunch of times. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting list. I think Grey Knights are on the up and up. I'm not sure if they're top tier, but they're a lot of fun either way. For me, I always think of Grey Knights as a Marine that has a toolbox, a more akin to an Eldar army.
Okay, I can believe it. Now you're traveling quite far and actually bounce around a bit. You're basically a 40k vagabond at the moment.
I am, yeah. So I'm playing Warhammer. I was planning to take Black Templars, but I couldn't quite get the models together, and I wasn't enamored with the fact that I wouldn't be able to have all the multi-melters that I was going to be taking on all the vehicles I was planning to take modeled. So I decided to drop out for that for the Grey Knights, which I knew I could get everything of, and it was virtually WYSIWYG.
Grey Knights are pretty good though. So I'm worried about how they'll play into things like the Guard that just won't care about your armor set.
Yeah, I get blown up. Absolutely blown up.
Okay, yeah, okay, good. Not good, but that's
I accept this fate. This could very well be my fate.
But that's an interesting question for everybody here, is that when you are going into a matchup to where that your back's up against the wall, you're playing down, what are some of the things that you focus on?
As a World Eaters player, right? Sometimes the charge game just isn't there for you. And so when you go into that, you're playing against a army that definitely has the advantage over you. You kind of just bear down and look at what you can accomplish. And I think that, Adam, you're looking at secondaries. In a lot of cases, I accept that when I'm playing this assault-based army that I'm going to be forward. I'm going to push as hard as I can forward, and so therefore I'm going to try and take advantage of what primaries I can and deny my opponent as much as possible, because if my opponent were to play forward, then they're going to have to play into what I'm doing, and they're going to try and, I mean, they got to take some advantages, and I'm hoping that they want to play against primaries as well, because that means they're going to come forward and try and take those objectives. There's a lot of these, having played a few rounds of Arcs of Omen now. I mean, the last weekend I played, I think every mission I played had 6 objectives. And with that, I'd argue 4 of them being in no man's land in a lot of cases. They had to come forward to me. And so how could I take advantage of that? That's what I was trying to look at. I had to see that certain secondaries just weren't going to be achievable because they're going to try and hold back. They're going to try and stall my ability to charge them. And so how could I do that? I think that gets to what you're talking about, Paul, but it's really just, what do I have and what can I take advantage of, knowing that I'm going in there with degrees of disadvantage.
I'm a big believer in not showing up to the table beat, like don't show up already defeated kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But you also got to have you got to be realistic in what you're capable of doing and how you do match up against your opponent on the other side of the table.
Absolutely.
And you get to know yourself and how you act when things aren't going well. So, but that's another. That's another thing. But we play a game like that where you can't easily go into it and be mismatched. Even things like a team environment.
Oh, this seems really timely, actually. So I am playing in an Age of Sigmar league, and for my round 2, I just happened to get matched up with my Age of Sigmar sparring partner, and so I knew going in that his list, he made that list to specifically counter my list, because I test played my list with him a couple times before going into the league. So the last time that I played him in practice, he just wiped the floor with me with this list. And I sort of sat and thought about it in the days leading up to our matchup, and I was like, okay, it's gonna be an uphill battle for sure, right? I may not get the win, but what I could do was try a completely different tactic in that situation than what actually didn't work before, right? That last loss, it wasn't really bad because I figured out a way that didn't work into that list. And so we had our matchup today. I tried, last time when he wiped the floor with me, I was too defensive. So this time going into it, I was like, I'm just going to be aggressive. And it was a really tough matchup, but I only lost this game by 1 point. It was a 1-point game. And so I would, even though I lost, I think that in the game, it was really easy to see, it was easy to see in the game, my growth as a player. I had the plan, I enacted the plan, and I can see now that it was the correct strategy. There's just a few things that I could tweak in the matchup again in order to get the win. So I think if you're going into a tough matchup, just keep your cool, look at what you can do, look at what tools you have, and just try to find the points wherever you can. That's how I kind of look at things anyway.
Yeah, try to pick some secondaries. I guess what I try to do is pick secondaries that I can control, that don't necessarily have to have me interacting with my opponent, kind of force them to try to knock me off my points, and then try not to, I guess one of those things, and maybe you were highlighting this too a second ago, Tanya, is that, if you play not trying to get points, then of course you're going to be behind.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, and I guess I maybe take this sort of this mentality from roller derby, where our periods or our jams were 2 minutes maximum, right? And at the end of that jam, you go back to the bench, and if it really went horrible, somebody would slap you on the back and say, hey, it's a new jam, right? So if your last turn was really bad, you could just say, hey, it's a new turn, and it's a new opportunity for me to look for those points. Maybe I can't win, but maybe I could still do something amazing.
I dig that. And then team environments, so how you're playing, when you're playing in a singles environment and it only matters if you win, you kind of have to play a certain way. You've got to play for the win. And if you're playing in a team environment, though, you don't always have to play just for that W. Got to try to play sometimes to minimize, how much you're getting removed from the table.
Yeah, that would be a cool experience for sure.
Is what
Oh, I
degree
mean-
do you play towards? When you're playing down.
Adam, you
I
good?
think it's a great perspective what Tanya's got. Try everything you can to see where you can make minute differences. It might be that you're just in a rock paper scissors environment, but there's no reason you can't try and get as close as you can. Try to strive for some. It could be arbitrary goal, or could just be, oh, cool. I'm going to lose this game. I'm going to try and get to 55 points. That's my goal, because I want to see if would this be a team environment game? Could I stop myself from getting a max points loss? And sometimes that could be a pivotal thing for you to learn. Like, how do you just get that little bit closer? And you don't mark around at a team event just off that knowledge. So I always think there's, even in losses, there's a way to improve. And if not improve in your play on the table, improve in your demeanor, your etiquette, the way you treat and interact with your opponent. There's nothing. Nothing says gentlemanly behavior or classy behavior like being gracious in defeat.
Sure.
Especially when it's possibly a defeat outside of your hands. Nothing me off on the game than feeling like I never had a chance. But if I had a chance and I squandered it, or I made a mistake, I like that. It gives me something to ponder, to work towards. It gives me a goal. It gives me drive. When I feel like I never had a chance, that's the one that tilts me.
But playing, I think you hit it too, is playing enough situations to where you know what leverage you can pull to try to manufacture those opportunities. That's the secret right there.
So, and with this, I also think understanding that there's in a lot of cases is built off of culminating conditions to the extent that you're really looking for marginal gains. There's this illusion that a lot of people want to fall into, that it's a Hail Mary that's going to win every time. And that's, in reality, is absolutely not the case. You have to build up. There has to be something of a plan, looking at what you're going into and where can you do this versus that, and how you're going to build up. It's a topic of discussion in some games recently and previously has been this matter of talking things out, and the perception that you can predict or you can determine, well, I'm going to do this and then this, and then I'm going to I will essentially run away to the point that maybe you should consider conceding at this point. And I have to express how much I don't agree with that concept, and that I don't think that you should even remotely propose that, because you don't have, in a lot of cases, especially when it comes to the ability to roll dice, I would say there's a very, 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 very small fraction of people that are able to accurately depict or predict what those marginal gains are going to look like over time by dice, and that there are some more pivotal dice rolls here or there. But honestly, because it's so possible to do marginal gains like that, and Tanya, I'd also throw it back to, in a good way, the Age of Sigmar system, where you determine some of your objectives turn by turn. I think that there's some really good aspects to how you can manage marginal gains by adjusting your objectives and doing that turn by turn. And I think that actually prevents the ability to say, well, I have these static objectives that are going to just do this, and there's no way you can stop me from doing this. So therefore, in turn 3, you might as well go ahead and concede. That's just not a realistic thing when your objectives can shift around like it does in Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, and a lot of people like to think if you get double turned, like the game is over. But in my game today, I would say from like turn 3 onward, I was on the back foot for sure. And then I got double turned at the start of turn 5, and I still I was down at the end of turn 5, right? So the double turn is not that crazy of a swing in most cases if you sort of take it into account. However, if I would have double turned in turn 4, then maybe I would have gotten that win, but maybe not. And I kind of like the variability of that. I like that it's a changing condition of the battlefield that you kind of have to be flexible enough to deal with. I know a lot of people in 40k just really hate it, and it's because the shooting phase is so devastating. But in 40k, it's actually a really fun kind of mental exercise to kind of navigate around the possibility of the double turn.
We started this conversation talking about Adam's chances with Grey Knights into guard. That was the thing. That was the veiled discussion.
Good luck, Adam. Good luck.
I'll be fine. It's literally, don't let the tanks kill everything. pick up all the OBSEC, pick up all the guardsmen as quickly as I can, and then hide.
I like it. It really, I know, I said that in a very specific way, but you have a plan, and that's kind of the thing: is try to formulate a plan and then execute it. And I mean, the game. I don't believe the game is rock paper scissors, but I certainly believe that you could design your list into that situation against someone who has designed their list. But I think the rock paper scissors situations are less common than most people would believe it to be. I.e., that most of the time you have the tools to at least compete with whatever you're facing across the table.
I getcha.
That's what I'm saying. It's not we like to talk about the stats and how they all compare to each other, but I think that in reality, most people have kind of a what they call a puncher's chance, no matter what, with a little bit of forethought.
Dice are dice.
And dice.
Even when the chips are down, if you just do sound fundamentals, dice can just be dice and bring you back in the game.
Make sure you're in the right spot at the table to capitalize on whatever happens with those cubes that get rolled. That's our show this week. It is I know we walked through the Strikeforce Agastus a bit. I do think that there's some pretty compelling rules, and it's a neat box set. And I know that I will be picking up more than one of the Dreadnoughts. For sure. And they're going to be fun to paint. And then I think they'll, whether or not you go into the Desolation Marines will probably be depending upon what chapter you play and also what you're facing the most often, because there is some tech there.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, there we go. Don't forget to check out the Geekron coffee. We had them on last week, and I had the coffee. It is actually great. I had the hazelnut, and I cold brewed it, like I mentioned in the segment that I did with them, and a very smooth taste, and absolutely really great. And Forge20 is the discount code that you can take advantage of if you choose to order. It gives you 20% off. That's all I want to mention this week. We'll see y'all next week.
Sweet. See ya.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.